Hey everybody, welcome to the Back to Brilliance podcast. We're your hosts, Henry and Joseph. Thanks for tuning in. We ask that wherever you listen, that you would subscribe and leave a comment or a review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that today, we're going to go ahead and get into talking about Productize, everything, turning ideas into assets that scale. In this episode, we're going to teach you how to mine other industries through weekly research, extract strategies that you can use in your market. And with that, I want to bring on our co-host, Joseph. Joseph, say what's up and take it away, bro.
Hey everybody, how's it going? So today I wanted to talk about, we had an episode 41 or 42, I believe, where we were, just kind of rapid firing a lot of knowledge and a lot of techniques. And so I kind of wanted to just expand upon a couple of them because, they were rapid fire and we didn't really go super in depth with things. So I really wanted to just pinpoint and focus on some things that, again, since it's kind of that time of year, it's the end of the year, people are starting to look forward to the next year or, to 2026 at the time of recording at least. And so, just trying to help everyone listening, help them out with ideas because ideas, they almost feel like they're unrepeatable or like you'll get a random shower thought, right? You'll be thinking in the shower and you're like, oh, that's a great idea, but then you don't write it down or they don't really come to you. So I'm speaking for myself in saying that. And so I wanted to make an episode about just making ideas and having them come to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, like we were talking about studying other markets and finding out what's working, that's a great way to use, what's at your disposal, is doing the research and finding out, and treating those ideas that you have, because there's nothing new under the sun, right? That's something we've discussed before, so it's just a different way of doing things. And when those ideas come to you, yeah, it's important that you write it down. You should treat your ideas, kind of like a funnel, right? So you run it through. Your first process is like, okay, maybe this can work. So then you go test the market and you go and look and do your research and see, has anybody else done this, and then, if it's working for them, then how are they doing it, and start to apply this to your business and see if it works. So that way, you're not spending a lot of time with trial and error. You can, use these ideas, sort of like a funnel just to, help you build and get to that next step.
Exactly. Yeah. And also going off of that, generate high volume of ideas because, like I said, if you think of an idea once a year, that's only one real idea a year versus if you try to come up with maybe 5 to 10 ideas per month, well, that's 60 or whatever, 60 to 120 ideas per year that you can kind of leverage and keep track of, right? And so in saying that, I also want to emphasize on don't focus on the perfection of the idea, right? I mean, an idea is an idea. It's like you can write down the idea, but then if you're I don't know about that one, still write it down because maybe you can combine some ideas. Maybe, it's a piece to the bigger whole. You never know, right? So focus on the flow of coming up with ideas and not so much, coming up with the perfect idea. Oh, this is going to make me $1 million, right? Just to kind of shout out someone that I saw recently. I saw a guy live streaming. He live streams him vibe coding, and his title is vibe coding until I make $1 million, right? And so, but he's only working on one idea or one product, at least it seems, right? And so, that's a great thing because he's being consistent with it, but also, if he were to come up with a bunch of different apps, I mean, I don't know the whole, process of what he's doing, but again, I say all of that to say, come up with ideas, make a system for it, and just come up with a bunch of them. That way you can test them later on, and or combine them at some point.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, just like any big brand that's out there, we'll take a soda company, for instance, they're not just selling soda. A lot of them sell juices. A lot of them sell waters. You'd be surprised, on your, favorite soda company that they provide all these different things. They don't deviate from the original. They're a beverage company, but they don't just have like cola. They have the Sprites, they have the juices, the waters, they have all that stuff. So you want to focus on the flow, not the perfection. And another tip and tool that you can use, I know it might be elementary, but just brainstorming, putting the big circle in the middle. This is what I do, and then just branch out. Or I think they call them now mind maps. Is that what it
Yeah,
is? Mind maps. Yeah. So
yeah,
there's so many tools out there to help you. You want to build that innovation engine, so to speak. So like you want to systematize your ideas. Testing and tracking to see what works. You can install what works and scrap the rest. So like Joe's saying, at this time right now in 2025, we're coming closely upon 2026. So like you got to stay innovative, you know what I mean, to stay ahead of the competition, number one. Number two is, if you're not growing, you're dying, so it's important that you spend this time, to reflect what worked, what didn't work, and what should I get rid of that's just consuming time and not really bringing about that growth that you want to see in your personal life and your business life and other areas. So build that little, use those little tips and tricks that we're sharing. They really work. We use them. And again, sometimes you get blindsided. So that's why it's time at this time of the year to spend a little bit of effort just to look at what's working, what's not.
I agree. So this kind of goes on to our next, point. You know, prioritize execution over theorizing, right? And so, you know, if you come up with, let's say, like I said, 5 ideas a month, try to finalize two of them, or not finalize, but try to weed it down to just two of them, right? And so, the way that you could do that is you could test them, right? So maybe the second week of every month, you try to test out your ideas. And I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this coming up. I mean, definitely in December, but also in January, where I'm gonna really try to focus on creating ideas, because right now, again, at the time of recording, we're at a really good point in time where not a whole lot of people. I mean, there's definitely a lot of people, but um, the market for AI apps have yet to really explode. And so I'm in a perfect place where I have the skills, I have the knowledge, and now I just need the ideas. And so, everyone listening can really benefit from this. If they jump on the opportunity of AI it's leveling the play field for everyone. And so, I've always wanted to develop apps. I've always wanted to get to make a product out of an app. And so now, again, this year is like the year for me to do that, because I imagine going into 2027, the market will be saturated, because the stigma around AI will dwindle and all of that. But all of that to say is, like, going back to just our what we have, our topics at hand. There's I believe Brian Tracy came up with this, or mentions this. Have like a productization and like a system for that, right? So he talks about the magic cube, which is your price, product type, and unique selling point, or USP. And so if you can really define what those are for your app or whatever product you're trying to come up with, then you'll be ahead of the curve, because you're already thinking of how will this help a consumer, right? How can I put this in front of someone, instead of like, I'm going to think of an idea, and like, I was going to come up with a really silly idea, but I can't think of one. But like, I'm going to try to create an idea and like, you don't even know if like there's a market for it, So all of that is to say create variations quickly, because the more variations of your idea you have, the more ideas that you can generate.
Absolutely. And then you just test them all. That's it, and you see what works and what doesn't, you can scrap, so there's no silliness to the idea. A lot of times we just get so caught up in what will they think, how would I look, it doesn't matter. The reality is maybe your idea, could actually serve someone, so you want to like validate, the front end offers, and back end, make sure like it works, you know what I mean. So you do this by trying, so if you don't try, and you put a product out, there's a lot of companies like this that they'll wait till it's perfect, and then they put it out there and then it's all full of bugs, it has issues, and then they have to go back to the drawing board and figure it out, where they spent too much time overthinking things. So, that's what we're talking about. Just generating a bunch of ideas at this time is really good. Even if you have something that's working, but maybe you can tweak it a little bit, I would encourage you to try it, and validate it, by putting it in front of people, you know what I mean, and having them test it out for you and see how it works, and then you go and spend the time on the back end building out the system for it and doing everything that you need to do, so it's important that you test things and do it quickly, don't waste a whole lot of time, especially the way things are going so rapid right now. And Joseph just shared about AI. It definitely has leveled the playing field for everybody, and I think a lot of people are just kind of scared to integrate it because for various reasons. But times are changing, guys, and the reality is if you don't change with the times, you get left behind.
Definitely, yeah. And all of this is to say, like, we're just trying to help everyone listening right now to get in the mindset of, hey, I want to make something new this year, right? It's very easy to get stuck in our ways. I mean, I will say, around the new year, right? The late December, early January time of year, people are like inspired to make a change. But these steps and these techniques that we're telling you, these will last throughout the year and not just like the first 2 months, that the typical period that people go through. But you know one thing that I've really been trying to improve on is, or maybe I've done it naturally, but now I really want to improve my methodology behind this. But look into industries that you want to get into every week, right? So let's say you want to do, maybe you want to have a product that serves elderly people, right? So you look into, well, okay, I'll use a better industry, right? Maybe like bio waste or something like that, right? So every week you look at like news for bio waste, the environmental studies, immerse yourself into that industry, because then you'll be like, hey, there's a gap in that. There was a guy, I don't know what came of it, but basically there was a dude in Sweden or something like that, a Nordic country, and he came up with a way to create reusable wood, I believe it was, but he was making wood out of soybean shells or whatever, right? So for all the soy milk and a bunch of other stuff, the shell or the waste of that, he was able to make that into wood. And there's, you can make it, you can make houses out of that. You can make flooring out of it. I forgot exactly the details of that, but like that guy had like a several $1 million evaluation or whatever because of that idea. It was such a great idea that people wanted to invest in it. And so, that guy was just looking in the market. He knew what he was looking for, and he found a gap. And so that's all you have to do, right? Find the gap. And that's something that I've really, really, really been wanting to do. And so, the best way to do that is know the industry that you're trying to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. You say taking that guy saw opportunity, he took waste and turned it into profit. Something that was going to be disposed now became income for him, and the people that are working in his business. So, yeah, hunt outside your industry, look for the unfair advantages, see the things that from a different lens, so to speak, and then you want to immerse yourself in it, read, attend, webinars or observe, find the documents, read them, like Joseph saying, any little clips you can get, because if you're in your business a lot of times, or your industry, you're going to just do everything the same like everybody else. It's like the music, right? When you hear music, everybody sounds pretty much the same, maybe a few little tweaks here and there, but it's when you're experimental with the music or with your business or your industry, then you start to find different ways of doing things, So when you look for those strategies, they can be transferred into a niche, and then you become an expert in that area, So like that guy, there's not a lot of people that are turning, old soybean, waste into wood. Like that's pretty amazing, So you want to find things and keep your eyes open, guys. This is the time. This is what we're encouraging. It's there's no one way to do things. You can do it many different ways, but and that's what we're encouraging, is to just to get out there and create different ideas, as quickly as possible, and then test what works, keep it, and what doesn't, scrap it.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, try to reconstruct the boundaries of your market or your industry, right? And I gave this example during the previous episode that we're referring to, but Duolingo, they basically gamified learning a language, and now that's a very common thing in app development, is to gamify things, right? Have points, have a little win streak, have a little reward system, and now that's like a very, very common thing in app development, is how can I, reward people? Well, the easiest thing is to gamify it, right? And so that became a standard. So, I will say it does take us, a special type of brain to think outside of the box like that. But again, I believe everyone is capable of thinking of one unique thing in their market. And so all of it is pretty much reliant on how good your idea generation is, because again, if you only think of one idea per year versus 50 to 100 ideas per year, well, one of those are bound to stick, or one of those is bound to make an impact, right? And so again, that's the whole point of this episode, is just come up with ideas, because you never know, if you were to implement that, how far it will take you.
Absolutely. And that's what we're talking about as well, joining a community, finding like-minded people, because then you could bounce ideas off of each other, and you'll be surprised, just the conversations that you have when somebody has the passion or the same passion or ideas that you have. You guys can, encourage one another, so that's just a little extra, but definitely that's where you want to be, because you might be too busy to come up with many ideas. We can come up with many excuses on why we won't do it, but the reality is time will pass. 2, 5, 10 years later, you look back and think, man, I should have, would have, could have then. So this is why we're encouraging it now. So you want to create those ideas now and start using them, especially if you're younger, because as you get older, and this is coming from an old guy, as you get older, your risks start to slow down, because you're like, well, I don't have a lot of time to be wasting and doing these things. So, but the way that I do it is just like this, I turn, my small ideas into like little experiments and see, does this work, so, and I try it really like couple weeks, maybe a month, and then it's like, okay, it didn't work, I'm going to try something different. But if I see a little bit of traction and a little bit of like, hey, there's a possibility, then I run with it and I keep it rolling till it doesn't serve me, you know, or it's taking too much time. So those are the tactics that you can use to find out, you know, what's working and what's not.
Yeah, I agree. And we've kind of touched on like the testing aspect of things. Henry said it before, but test in public, right? There's a lot of Reddit forums, there's a lot of ways for you to get it out to people. There's Twitter groups, I'm sure that there's Facebook groups. So, put it in front of people, put it in front of people who, will give you creative feedback, or even GitHub, you can upload a GitHub and then, whatever, if it's a code thing, right? But again, turn your insights into small experiments, because if you don't test them out, you'll never know, the validity of them, or, again, if people will actually want it. So, one person I talked to at one point, he was like, I built out like he had an app or whatever, and he built out the backend logic in Excel, or Google Sheets, right? He built out the logic or the system in Google Sheets, and then posted it on Reddit, and he still to this day gets like around like 20 signups per year or something like that, 6 or 7 years later. And so, that's like a good idea to really test the market. But also, if you do want to have an idea be experimented on, you have to have your thresholds, or you have to have your metrics, right? So, how many replies do you want? How many signups do you want? How many, X, Y, and Z, really map out your metrics, because that will help you with your system, right? If you're like, oh, I got, if I get 5 signups per month, that's a success for me, right? Versus, oh, I don't really care. I don't really have an idea. That's not going to help you in your system, because you don't have anything defined in your system.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, guys. I mean, you got to test, right? Everything is a test. So, and then what works, you keep. So turning your ideas into assets that scale, that's the key here, right? So we do that by, treating our ideas as funnels, right? So you see what works, what doesn't, focus on the flow, not on the perfection, guys. That's the reality. It's like, you just want to keep it moving, so we don't have time to stop in business. So just keep moving and build that innovative engine, and you do that by testing and tracking, seeing what works, keep it. If it doesn't work, scrap it, and then we talked about, the markets, just seeing if there's a market for it. That's the reality. It's just like, you don't want to spend a lot of time if there's no market for it. So, and the only way to find out is to put it out there, and, your first idea, put it out there, see if people gravitate to it. And if you even get one, that's enough validation right there to say that there is a market, and all you have to do is find more people like that, so that's testing the front end before you build out the back end. Like we said, a lot of times you build this big old idea and then nobody buys it, and it's like, well, why? Because in your mind, it worked one way, but for reality, it needs to be another way, so before you build the full boat out, just go ahead and test, your ideas amongst. And the good thing is you could test it amongst your existing clientele that you have now, And then we talked about hunting outside of your industry for unfair advantages. Like Joseph shared that story, that gentleman turned, scrap soy into wood, and now, he's got a profitable business. So don't just get trapped in your own industry. Look outside and see what other people are doing as well. So with that, guys, I want to bring Joseph back on if he has any closing thoughts before we end the episode.
Yeah, basically, I'm going to emphasize this again. I've said it a couple times this episode, but, really try to come up with ideas per month, because, again, right now is the time to come up with ideas, right? This is the time for us to execute our ideas and not just sit on them, because what you could think of, other people can think of as well, or they could think of as well. And so, the more time that you sit on your idea, the more time that you have other people to elaborate on the idea that you have, right? And so I don't want people listening to this to, like Henry said, 2, 3 years, maybe 5 years from now, look online and be like, damn, I could have come up, or I thought of that. I could have done that. And also, I want to give a shout out to our community. It's a community full of entrepreneurs tired of doing everything alone, while we have a community that has practical self-growth tools, as well as community support and weekly structure to help you stay focused and to follow through with whatever you're trying to do. So that's at backtobrilliance.com. If you scroll down to our community section, you'll be linked up with like-minded people like you.
Well said. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning into our podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment or review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, we're out. Till the next time, stay blessed.
Bye-bye.